Go.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I will be doing the middle passage. Basically, I'll be continuing from where Rihanna left off because she mainly did how the slaves were taken from West Africa, and I'll be talking about the journey, which will be called the middle passage. So, what and when was it? So, here we have from about 1518 to the mid 19th century, millions of African men, women, and children made the 21 to 90-day voyage aboard grossly overcrowded sailing ships manned by crews mostly from Great Britain, the Netherlands, Portugal, and France. With that being said, the Middle Passage refers to the journey across the Atlantic Ocean from the coast of West Africa to the New World, which the ships made carrying their cargo of slaves. The Middle Passage was the stage of the triangular trade in which millions of Africans were forcibly transported to the New World as a part of the Atlantic slave trade during the period of slavery. This journey lasted from 6 weeks to 3 months. The Atlantic trade, known as the transatlantic slave trade or Euro American slave trade, involved the transportation by slave traders of various enslaved African people, mainly to the Americas. The slave trade regularly used the triangular trade route and its middle passage and existed from the 16th to the 19th century. Now we'll talk about the conditions during the Middle Passage. As shown in the picture below, slaves below the decks lived for months in conditions of squalor and indescribable horror. Disease spread and ill health was one of the biggest killers. Mortality rates were high, and death made these conditions below the deck even worse. Now, I'll be just speaking on two aspects on the journey to the during the middle passage. So, on these ships, we know that they were cramped. Slaves were chained and movement was restricted. They were unable to use the bathroom, so they had to sit in their own filth, and sickness was spread easily. And as we know, they're chained together. So that means that if one slave was supposed to die, that body was going to stay beside the living slave until the body even started to decay and rot. And with that being said, it was getting stuffy, and knowing that it was dark under the bottom of a ship, there was not much air and a little bit of oxygen. And he says that not even a candle would want to burn down there. Now, when it comes to the food, African slaves they were unable to digest the food carried by the European crew, making them sick and even worse, and leading them to die even faster. Sick slaves were often denied food and left to die by the Europeans. So it's a case where even if you have the food, you can't eat, and you're being denied it even if you want it. So complete mistreatment and humiliation for our slaves. On top of that, the mistreatment was going against women as well because they were subjected to rape. After a while, most slaves just became suicidal because what is the whole point of being kept by your own will? So there are lots of accounts in history of slaves drowning by throwing themselves overboard rather than enduring any of these trials. Now I'm going to do a short overview on the Middle Passage. So, as I was saying before, I was talking about the triangular trade, and it is shown in the picture below. So, the Middle Passage was one of the legs of the triangular trade route that took goods such as knives, guns, ammunition, cotton cloth, tools, and brass dishes from Europe to Africa. They took Africans to work as slaves in the Americas and West Indies, and items mostly that were raw produced on the plantation, such as sugar, rice, tobacco, indigo, and rum. Now, the Middle Passage supplied the New World, as they called it, with its major workforce and brought enormous profits to the international slave traders. And at the same time, it exacted a terrible price in physical and emotional anguish on the part of the uprooted Africans from their country. It was distinguished by the callousness to human suffering to be a part of developing the traders and the goods of a country. Below, we just have a diagram showing the triangular trade. If you look down to the bottom, the arrow pointing to the left that is going towards the Caribbean, you can see that it shows the Middle Passage. And the Middle Passage was just mainly about the enslaved African people, even though in the triangular trade we have the exchange of different goods. But you know that sadly, our slaves were one of these goods as well. Now, this leads me to the end of a very short presentation, and these, hold on, these were some of my resources used, and the presentation will be posted in the group. Thank you.